Welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, what do we got for this week?
It's been a bit of a quiet week, and I think that's mostly because, we're kind of at the All Star break now, and not many games have really taken place. So naturally, not a lot of news coming from that. But we got some All Star news. We got some trade news. Probably the biggest trade we've had so far this season. Yeah, and then potential more NHL expansion talks. So we can where do you want to start here?
Let's start with a couple of the milestones off
All
the
right.
top. So Lars Eller over the weekend hit 1,000 career NHL games. Definitely did not think he had played that many, but well deserved. He's been an absolute journeyman for a lot of teams.
Yeah, he's carved out a nice career for himself, and a lot of people just kind of remember him with Washington being a big part of their cup winning team, but a lot of people kind of fail to realize that he played quite a bit with Montreal before as well. So
yeah, for the longest time,
a good chunk of games with them.
I definitely knew him as that, as a Canadian, and some guys, we got so used to Tavares being an Islander, and then after a while you remember him as a Leaf, but he really had two great stints with those teams, and has been a very solid guy throughout his career.
Solid enough that when you go on Google and look him up and go under videos, the first video is when he got his shit rocked in the playoffs by Eric Gryba. So according to Google, that's his biggest career highlight. So
righteous.
Take that for what it's worth there. But nonetheless, Stanley Cup champion, and might be in some trade talks actually coming up. I think we're about a month away from the trade deadline. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes, because Pittsburgh's kind of we're unsure of what's going on with them or what they're going to be doing. So maybe keep an eye on Lars Eller for someone potentially to be moved.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting with Pittsburgh in general to see what they do going into the deadline. Are they really going to push to try and make those playoffs? Are they going to call it quits? It'll be interesting to see what they decide to do over there.
I think they should stay exactly where they're at. I hope they finish right where they're at. That works out well for
playoffs, right?
They're just outside the bottom 10 teams, so that's right where I want them to be.
Oh, did they? The Sharks have their first?
Yeah, and if Pittsburgh finishes
top 10 protected,
top 10, yeah. So I like where they're at right now, especially with some of the players that are going to be available around that 11, 12, 13, 14 spot. It'd be nice, but we'll wait and see what goes on with them, because again, Gensel is also another guy that's rejected an offer from the Penguins, so it kind of seems like there might not be a deal that they're going to be able to agree on. So he's probably going to be moved at the deadline as well, which evidently makes that team much worse.
Yeah, and honestly, if I were a Sharks fan, I'd almost be hoping that they finish in the bottom 10, so that, because after that, I assume then you get their first next year unprotected, regardless. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I don't see them being worse next year.
If they lose Gensel and they all get a year older, I don't see them getting a ton better. Erik Karlsson, Letang, Crosby, Malkin, all of them another year older. Like, without.
But the thing is some of them don't seem to age. Like Crosby's only getting better. It seems.
That's totally fair.
And we've got a trade we'll dive into in a little bit here. But looking at that trade, you now got to think that the price for Gensel is even higher than what it was. And so I think not only will Pittsburgh get some good young pieces back, they will get young pieces that I think will be a big part of their team, for the remainder of this season or just next season itself. But I don't see them, finishing in a bottom 10 team this year and next year.
That's fair.
especially because I think if they finish a bottom 10 team, I think there's going to be a coaching change made there. And I think that will also be a huge part in turning it around for them. And plus, just because of the players that are available in this draft in that spot, is I'm not even looking at what's available next year, because seeing the guys available there, it's like if you can get one of those guys, you gotta hope that you can capitalize on snagging one of them.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. And it's hard to ever get guess against Crosby, right? He's
Exactly.
so consistent.
Yeah.
Couple other milestones. We got Alex Turcotte got his first NHL career goal the other night. I
Finally.
I definitely thought he had one by now. When I saw it, I was a bit surprised, but it was a nice goal. Good for him.
Yeah, it's not often you see a guy who was a former 5th overall pick and now he's uh, 22, turning 23 at the end of this month, and he finally gets his first goal. He's maybe he's a late bloomer though. You never quite know with some of those guys. So
Yeah, and
maybe
he's on.
LA's got another weapon that is
Yeah,
finally
he's
ready
on
to
the
make the
Kings.
jump for him. Yeah,
So the Kings are a pretty well built team at the moment. So it's it's very possible that he just couldn't quite crack the lineup because they had guys that might be on a third line on a lot of teams playing on their fourth.
yeah,
Kind of making it hard to push into that lineup. We even saw Quentin Byfield take a little extra time. So,
yeah,
but good for him. And we got Austin Matthews hitting 600 career points, which is wild. It does not feel like he's been in the league that long.
yeah. I can still remember. It feels like just the other day that I was watching his first game and he dropped 4 goals, and now we're at a point where he's already got 600 career points. Is quite crazy how quickly time goes by when you put it in that perspective.
Yeah, he is absolutely racking them up. It's
Um,
also wild comparing that to McDavid. It's so unfair to compare anyone to McDavid, but like McDavid got drafted a year earlier, and he's already what? He already hit 900, didn't he?
yeah, yeah. Before actually, I've got a thing about comparing to McDavid. Um, before I get into that, just another one that actually just happened last night. Shakir Mukhamadullin, I was talking about him in the last episode about how San Jose had just recalled him. He recorded his first NHL point last night, getting an assist. I mean, he's only played 3 games up with the Sharks now, but he looks like their best defenseman when he's out there. He already looks just so comfortable out there. I think San Jose's got a great piece in him. He's not their best defenseman as of this moment when he was playing, because Mark-Edouard Vlasic has turned back time and has been lighting the lamp like crazy, which I think deserves a shout out. He has 5 goals in his last 9 games, and he's currently on a 3-game goal streak going into the All Star break, which I don't think a single person would have had on their bingo card there.
Absolutely not. I mean, so not only is he known for being incredibly over the hill for like several years at this point, but even in his prime, he was a fantastic shutdown defenseman, a shot
Yeah,
blocking machine. He wasn't known for scoring goals. That's why they had Brent Burns. So it's
yeah,
it's wild to see him just come out this January and he's just absolutely firing them into the net right now.
yeah. Actually, also, uh, speaking of defensemen, one thing I wanted to point out that's interesting. This is by Data Driven Hockey. So through their analytics, I'm going to give you their top 15 defensemen, taking into account all of the advanced stats. And some of these are kind of surprising, actually.
Okay.
So 15, they have Eric Carlson.
All right. Is this
Four,
like just like overall like value to the team, like offensive, defensive, everything?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Um, uh, 14, Gustav Forsling.
Interesting. I definitely wouldn't have had him up there.
13, Morgan Riley.
That makes sense.
Number 12, Brett Pesci.
I would not have had that.
11, Jalen Chatfield.
These are a lot of weird names that I would not have expected.
Another Hurricanes defenseman. Number 10, Matthias Ekholm.
Ekholm makes sense.
Number 9, Miro Heiskanen.
Okay.
We're seeing another trend of the theme here. Number 8, Brady Shea.
So they just love the Hurricanes, huh?
All Hurricanes defense are playing really good this year, aside from 2. Number 7, Quinn Hughes.
Right.
Number 6, Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
That's fair. I was so annoyed when Florida signed him. I really wanted Tampa to pick him up. If we could have got him for cheap, I was hoping we'd sign him.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams looking at when it was happening were like, I don't know if they necessarily wanted the team down, but looking at it now, it's like, yeah, you wish you could have gotten your hands on him.
He looks bad when he's making more than like $6 million, but if you can sign him for a lot less than that, it's a good player still.
Number 5, Adam Fox.
Interesting.
Which,
so it's probably per game then because he's missed time, but
yeah. Number 4, Cale Makar.
Yep.
Number 3, Jacob Slavin.
There he is. You knew he'd be there.
Number 2, Evan Bouchard.
Okay. I mean, he's been lighting it up with McDavid over there, and I really don't know much about his defensive game. I don't know if he has a bit of a two-way game to him, or if he's just an offensive guy.
He's playing a really solid two-way game. His even strength D is actually the highest out of every guy on this list. So, but he's also the only other one aside from Erik Karlsson who doesn't have anything for penalty kill. So take that for what you will.
Can I guess at number 1?
Yeah.
Noah Dobson.
It is not Noah Dobson. He's pretty bad defensively.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah. Number 1, continuing with the trend, is none other than Brent Burns.
Jeez. Is this guy's profile picture a Carolina Hurricanes jersey?
No, literally, like looking at all their stats, like is nuts. Like their defense are playing really well, which is why you see their goalies not really having the greatest numbers. But it's interesting with Carolina that they've got 5 guys there in the top 15, but not included is Dmitry Orlov, who they threw the bag at last offseason, and then the reuniting with Tony DeAngelo. So those are the 2 guys that are left off the list when it kind of looked like with signing Orlov and bringing in DeAngelo was going to be like, Jalen Chatfield was going to be the one moving to kind of that 7th defenseman. And I mean, he's outplaying both of them in terms of advanced stats. So
I don't know how much
to see from Carolina.
How much value I'd put into that. Like, there's something to it for sure, but Jalen Chatfield has not played like a top 15 NHL defenseman this year. Like I get whatever numbers he has to put it together, but it's
but he definitely plays better than Orlov and DeAngelo, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, he's not bad though. Like I wasn't a fan of him, but when you watch his game, like he's one of those guys almost where it's like you don't notice him, which means he's not doing anything wrong. Like it's not like he's excelling in errors, but he's never making mistakes out there from the games that I've watched. So and like
that's exactly
I'm not a
what
big
Jan
Hurricanes
was for us
fan
in our cup runs. Like you would almost never out there, And that's a good thing because he's playing out there 20 minutes a night with Victor Hedman, and you never notice him making a dumb play. Like,
Yeah.
he's with Hedman. He doesn't need to be the one setting up all the plays. So,
Yeah.
if you have the right team makeup, that's all you need.
Yeah. And then the one we'll just quickly run through this one because most of these are pretty standard. There's a couple standouts. But TSN, I don't know if you've seen this, but TSN dropped their top 20 players in the NHL right now.
I did not see this.
Okay, so I'll run you through, and this is currently like as of this moment.
Is this just like put together by a couple of their insiders and writers? This one isn't based on stats?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So number 20, Sebastian Aho.
Fair.
Number 19, Jack Hughes.
That's got to be because he was injured.
Most likely. I'm assuming if he had played all season, they probably would have him higher.
That's got to be.
Number 18, Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's been very solid for Vancouver.
Also worth noting, he's only one of two goalies on this list.
I was gonna say, at this moment, he's head and shoulders second best goalie in the league. So I would expect him to be one of two.
Yeah, and keep in mind this is all just off of this season. So
yeah,
number 17, Zach Hyman.
He's good. He plays with McDavid, but
yeah,
I don't think he drives the line on his own.
Yeah,
he's not. Are you really?
Don't get me wrong. I like Zach Hyman, but
yeah, he's a great guy to complement McDavid's game. But
yeah,
if a team comes to me and says, "Do you want Sebastian Aho or do you want Zach Hyman?" I'm taking Sebastian Aho.
Yeah, exactly. Number 16, William Nylander.
That's fair.
Number 15, Sam Reinhart.
Honestly, it's almost insane to say, but if they're just going off this season, Sam Reinhart should probably be higher.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
He's been really good.
Number 14, Leon Draisaitl.
Yep, I think pretty much any other year he'd be higher, but he's having a bit of a down year at the moment.
Number 13, Artemi Panarin.
He could probably be higher too. He's doing really good for the Rangers. But there's only so many spots.
Yeah. Number 12, JT Miller.
That's fair.
I think is fair.
I think you could knock him down a little, but splitting hairs, knock him to 14th or something.
Yeah. Number 11, Sidney Crosby. Which I think that one's kind of interesting considering the season he's having. But again, when you look at the guys in the top 10, it's like I can see why.
I realize that, just 5 guys in a row, I'm like, that's too low. But then I'm thinking there's only so many spots and there's a lot of guys having great years.
Yeah. Number 10, Elias Pettersson.
That's fair. That's a good spot for him.
Number 9, the other goalie on this list, Connor Hellebuck.
Yeah.
Number 8, Mikko Rantanen.
I think he's one of the guys that have a bit lower than a couple of the guys I was saying earlier. I think he's very good, but I think he's very slightly overrated, and that's only because people rate him, in the top 10 players in the NHL.
Yeah.
He is a very solid player.
Yeah. Number 7, David Pastrnak.
Yep.
Now, this one I personally would swap him because, we don't know for sure, but TSN's saying it's just based off this season. And if it's based off just this season, then I would swap these two. But number 6 is Quinn Hughes and number 5 is Cale Makar. And I think if you're going just off this season, I think personally I would have Quinn Hughes higher.
I completely agree. I think at that point, they're kind of I imagine they came to the agreement of these guys are about tied, but we like Cale Makar more, so we're just going to put him up.
Yeah.
And it's one position, so
yeah,
fair enough.
Number 4, Austin Matthews.
Yep. Yep. He's been really good. I'm very interested to see where McDavid lands on this.
Number 3, Nikita Kucherov.
Okay. Okay.
Number 2, Connor McDavid.
No shot.
Which means number 1 is Nathan MacKinnon. In fairness, if you are going off this season, MacKinnon should be 1. But if it's also based off this season, McDavid shouldn't be 2.
I was gonna say either if Connor McDavid was 1, I would be fine with it because he's Connor fucking McDavid. If he's not first, that means he's behind Kucherov and MacKinnon automatically.
Yeah.
I would also argue behind Matthews.
Yeah, you could even make the argument. You could make the argument that McDavid literally could be 6.
Yeah.
Like, it's not based off this season. It's not absurd to say I would have Makar and Hughes higher, personally. But that's the thing.
Basing it on this
if he's
season,
not 1, he shouldn't be 2. He should be 3 or
1 or 3.
Going to,
depending on how you look at it. I personally would have, and there is bias here, I would have Kucherov 1, MacKinnon 2, Matthews 3, and then honestly, I'd probably still put Hughes, Makar before McDavid based on this season alone. Obviously, if we're going off, career, last 3 years, any of that, McDavid is 1.
He clears, and it's not even close. Yeah.
But that's interesting. I think TSN, I think a lot of these sports journalist groups really want to push the story of McDavid or MacKinnon winning the Hart.
Yeah.
Just a couple hours ago, an hour ago, I was watching the All Star competition where they were picking and drafting the teams, and they announced MacKinnon as the Hart Trophy favorite.
Yeah.
Like I think they really want to push that narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, unless something crazy happens from now to the end of the season, I think MacKinnon probably does win it just because, and like we talked about, regardless of whether or not people say it or not, like there is that ultimate bias. And I mean, it sucks in this day and age, but when you look at it and they're like, do we pick a Canadian or a Russian? They're going to pick the Canadian 9.9 times out of 10. Like, that's just the way it is. So again, unless Kucherov goes on a historic run here from now to the end of the season, MacKinnon falls off a cliff.
It's so hard to predict because the voters are unpredictable, but also they both have so many things going for him, like people want MacKinnon to win because he's never won in the individual awards that people figure he would have by now. But also Kucherov is absolutely carrying this Lightning team. But also people don't like the Russian and they love the Canadian. Like there's so many different reasons pulling back and forth. It's really hard to differentiate which way it's going to go.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it'll be interesting to see, like we've talked about, who gets the Hart and then what happens with the Ted Lindsay. Because that's very telling, I think, if you see, MacKinnon gets voted for the Hart Trophy, wins it by a landslide, but then you see Kucherov, maybe win the Ted Lindsay by a landslide. It's kind of like, well, and again,
maybe these guys behind the books don't know what they're talking about, or who knows? Maybe if Matthews scores, 67 goals, all the players go, yeah, that's really fucking hard, and vote for him, or they vote for Hellebuck because he's having an insane year. Like, I could see a lot of guys winning the Lindsay. I can see maybe 3 different guys winning the Hart at the moment.
Yeah, I really do think that the Hart is kind of a 3-horse race, whereas the Lindsay can definitely go a bunch of different ways. But moving on, we've got some other news to discuss. Which one do we want to dive into? We kind of got we got 4 kind of other things on the chopping block here.
So I don't know how much steam this has currently, but we'll talk about how Forsyth County, that's a county in Georgia in the U.S., is about to greenlight the arena project, which is, as the name sounds, a project that will allow them to build a NHL caliber arena in their county. So it's basically sounds like they're looking to get the Thrashers back into the NHL.
Yeah, whether it's going to be the Thrashers or a different team name, I'm not 100% sure. My biggest concern is like this is their last run at it. Like they've already had, and I like the idea of a team in Atlanta. Don't get me wrong, but it's like they had two chances, they failed miserably, and it's like it's they must have something that shows them that this time it's going to be successful.
I
What that
I
is, I'm
don't
not
even think
sure,
that's the
but
case. I think if it were to fail, I think they could go again. There's such a market in Atlanta. It's massive. And let's not pretend, this isn't a Winnipeg situation, It they didn't have people not coming out because the arena was tiny and it sucked, or weather, or prices. The Thrashers were abysmal the entire time they ever existed. It it was a GM, it was a coach problem, it was a player problem. It wasn't a business problem like I think a lot of people think it was. They just sucked ass, and there was
they
no
they
light at
did
the end of
they
the
did yeah.
tunnel. And I
But I
think
guess
that's
the
the main
biggest thing
thing.
is you need fan support. You see all these other teams that suck and go through rebuilds, and they still get that fan support, and Atlanta just started to not get that. And so if it's like if your team can only thrive there if it's good, and then if they got to go through a rebuild and the fans give up on the team, then that's probably not somewhere where you want to have a team there. You want a team that's going to have a fan base that will
I
stick
don't
with
think
them through good times and bad, not just if they're only a good team.
I think most teams in the league would have failed. A good chunk of them would have failed if they had the same the same product that the Thrashers put out there. I wonder if the Lightning would have worked. I wonder if San Jose would have. A lot of those teams, they really they were just so bad, and like all
Yeah,
these
well,
other teams,
don't
at
don't
least
throw
some of
San
them
Jose
were.
in there. They
Uh,
made it work with a shit roster in the fucking Cow Palace of all places.
oh yeah, and Tampa was bad early too, but like after a couple of years, they started around 99 2000, they started turning it around, and so you know uh the Islanders, for example, they were pretty bad throughout most of the 2000s and the 2010s, but they had such a fan base because they had a history of winning that these guys they were committed to it. But the Thrashers showed up and they sucked, and these guys held on for about 10 years and they just sucked the whole time, and it never looked like it was getting better. Like, I think having just like, obviously not like a legitimate dynasty, but like having this like dynasty of like a just these guys that represent Calgary gives or represents your team, gives you something. In my mind, I was thinking of Calgary as an example. Even if they never won a cup, guys like Iginla and stuff, they really built up the fan base for the coming rebuild afterwards. That you know sucked for a long time, but they they kept at it because by that point you've cheered for a team and you know what it's like to be good. But I
Yeah.
just the threat they were so bad. And it makes me think of the Panthers. Like, if the Panthers didn't turn it around 5-ish seasons ago, I wonder how long they'd keep going before people started going, maybe they're going to relocate before Arizona. Like,
There was always their name was always kind of thrown around by people
yeah,
of that they should. I think it really comes down to if you're gonna you know you're gonna put a team there, you need to make sure that you've got the best owner possible. And
yeah,
I think
owner
if
is
if they're
massive.
going to do it, I think there's one choice and one choice only. They need to do whatever they can to get the owner of the Atlanta Falcons as the owner of whatever potential team they have. Because the owner of the Atlanta Falcons does whatever he can to create the best atmosphere and get as many fans as possible, even if that's making the price of stuff at the stadium as low as he possibly can while still making money. He'll do it. The amount of stuff he does to really create this great atmosphere that the Atlanta Falcons have in the NFL is incredible. And even just seeing interviews, like, he's such a humble guy. Like, it's just because he loves that team and he loves football and he takes pride in that. And if they can get him to, maybe not the main one, but be a part of this team that they're looking to bring, I think could be a huge step for whatever team name they're going to go with. I think if they go back to Atlanta, just do the Thrashers. I think everybody would want that.
I absolutely do. I always thought the Thrashers was a super cool name. I personally like their logo. I don't know how popular it really was, but
no, it was popular. It was popular.
I don't think people disliked it, but
and when they left and went to Winnipeg, Winnipeg just became the Jets again. So
yeah,
it's not unrealistic to be like, yeah, they're going back. They can't do the Flames because that already exists. So go back to the Thrashers. And I think if they roll out those, baby blue jerseys with the Thrashers logo, I think people who aren't even Thrashers fans would buy those jerseys just because of how iconic they are.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, like a reverse retro or an alternate jersey that's like black that has their like yellow and red like Thrasher logo on the front. That would look sick. That would look really good.
What was the I'm gonna look it up here. What was the red Thrashers jersey they had?
I feel like it had some.
Yeah, it was kind of sick.
Like,
it literally just said.
Shoulders.
It literally just it had the kind of the middle part of the Thrashers logo, just kind of the bird part on the shoulders, and then it just said Thrashers in the middle with the number underneath. That's sick, man.
I was curious, so I just Googled it. Just because I was talking about how having a history of winning helps the team. Discounting the original 6 era, no team has ever relocated after winning a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. Once you've won a cup and you've got that history, it shows it.
Yeah, you've got that pedigree to your team. You're that even if it's just the one. Washington's just got that one, but that immediately separates them from the Nashvilles, from the Blue Jackets. So it really kind of changes things around, and there's other ways to get it. Like I was saying, I think San Jose is at much less of a risk of relocation because of guys like Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, Brent Burns, versus who's the best Predator to ever play. David Legwand? I guess it has to be Pekka Rinne.
It's honestly probably Philip Forsberg at this point. You can make the argument for Pekka Rinne, but I think their best player in franchise history is currently
Philip Forsberg at this point. Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, say the Coyotes had won a cup already, and you relocate them. You can't take a Arizona Coyotes Stanley Cup banner and go and put it up in Houston in their arena or something. Like you just can't do that. Yeah. So you're really going to take a Stanley Cup banner and be like, well, it's just going to be put away forever in storage or something like that. It's just, I don't think we'll ever see a day and age where a team that's won the Stanley Cup is going to be relocated.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And while we're at it, let's just shout out how dumb the idea is that you don't keep your cities stats, you keep your franchises.
Yeah.
Ilya Kovalchuk should not have been the Winnipeg Jets' leading franchise scorer for as long as he was. I believe he got passed by Blake Wheeler at this point, but like it should be Teemu Selanne, it should be Dale Hawerchuk. They played for the Jets.
Especially the fact that Kovalchuk never even played a game for them. Like for the Jets. So
yeah, he only played in Atlanta. And when there's already so much pedigree with some of those guys in Winnipeg, just with a different quote franchise. It's very lame
Yeah,
the way the NHL officially looks at it.
yeah, yeah. But it's gonna be something to keep an eye on. I think if they can, again, I think a big thing comes down to who do you get to be your owner? Like you got to have someone that actually is going to put time and money and effort into creating a great team there. Like if you've got someone who's just there to make some money and that's it and doesn't care what happens, then I think it's going to be
Yeah,
another failure there. But I think if you get someone in who actually wants to create a cup winning team, and the way that Vegas did it, I think is, and now obviously Atlanta's not going to get a team and uh, win a cup in their first 6 years like Vegas. I mean, the way Vegas came in, they really put the boots to a lot of teams with some of the moves they made, and I think teams have learned from that. But I think if you get an owner in there who envisions within 10 to 15 years and be like, yeah, we can win a cup. I think they can be successful there, but winning has
yeah,
to happen there. You can't put out a dog shit team year after year.
yeah.
But
Um,
we'll see what happens with them. We'll keep an eye on that. So now that's two potential
yep. Them and
expansion.
Salt Lake City
So
are
which is
really
interesting
pushing
because
for it.
Houston was kind of the top one, and now it's like there's been no talk on them, and it's like, so now what do you? Because again, I'm still a believer. If you're doing expansion teams, I think you just gotta be like, it doesn't have to be all at once, but I think you got to put down the foundation for four, just to again create that parity um, within the league. Just my personal opinion, but obviously that would be over the span of a 10-year period or so.
Yeah,
It wouldn't all happen at once. It'll be kind of whatever way you do it, whether it's 1 year it's one team, 2 years later it's the next, and so on, or you do what they did in I think it was 2000. You do two this year, and then in
yeah.
four or
I think
5 years you just throw in another two.
yeah. They used to do just two new teams. The Senators and Tampa entered at the same time. I believe in 2000 it was the Blue Jackets and the Wild both came in.
Yeah,
They really liked bringing in two teams at once, and they really did not help those teams out in the past. It was sink or swim for them
yeah.
when coming into the league. They didn't get to pick players off other rosters like they do now. So it'll be
Especially with how
interesting to see how
deep
they do
teams
it.
are nowadays.
Yeah,
Like you look at some teams, and like you look at Toronto, and like you could get a great player from there. So many different teams you can get. You could get great, and I think that what makes it kind of interesting is if you've got two teams, you know, in the mix, and you're doing it all at once. It's like, do you see some trades happen between those teams to secure that? If uh, you know, Salt Lake City grabs X player and Atlanta was like, shit, we wanted to get them. Do you see them, make a trade and whatnot to try and get the players that they wanted more? It'd be a really interesting thing that
it would be
um,
very cool, and
we might never get to see.
we we saw it at the last expansion drive for Seattle. Um, Toronto paid a first round pick to Pittsburgh uh, to get Kapanen uh, so they could uh,
No, Capman was a different one. It was Toronto traded with Pittsburgh to get Jared McCann, and
Jared
that was
McCann,
so
and that
Seattle didn't take Kerfoot.
so they didn't take Kerfoot. That's it. And I know a lot of Toronto fans were like, "Why didn't we keep McCann instead of Kerfoot?" But
Yeah,
so yeah,
and that's like,
it's
look where
funny that
McCann's at.
they paid a first round pick to lose a 40 goal scorer.
I don't think they gave up a first for McCann.
No, I thought it was a first, but it might
I
not have
know
been.
that the first round pick was they sent the first round pick to Carolina, so Carolina would take um they would take on Patrick Marlowe's contract and buy him out. The Jared McCann was for Philip Hallander and a 7th round pick.
Oh wow, I definitely thought they paid a first. Never mind.
Yeah, so they really, and Philip Hallander isn't even in the league anymore.
I was
So
gonna
like,
say, who's Philip Hallander? Why did Pittsburgh do this trade?
well, at the time he was a former 2nd round pick and just starting to come into his own. And coming over from Sweden, so he was kind of actually a pretty good looking prospect at the time, and just
I see.
didn't pan out. But yeah, looking at
Okay.
it, it's like yeah, it's like Toronto goes out and makes a move to bring in a player just to shield the guy that they couldn't protect. When it now kind of looks like they picked the wrong 2 of the players to protect. But
Yeah.
I think Kerfoot already priced himself out of Toronto. McCann would have anyways. So
Yeah, that's fair.
really not much different now looking at either way, because they wouldn't have either of them, which if they went a different route. Uh,
The Edmonton Oilers they have increased their win streak from last time. They're now at 16. They're tied with Columbus for second all-time win streak. One more win and they tie Pittsburgh
yeah,
for the all-time longest regular season win streak at 17. That'll be really interesting to see
and
what
their
they do
first
going
game
forward there.
back after the All-Star break is they're playing in Vegas. So that's kind of the one that's going to be the difference maker,
That's gonna
because
be a
if they
good
win
game.
that, then they're then tied with Pittsburgh, and their next game is they go into Anaheim, which there's no way they would lose that game. So it really comes down to, and how funny would that be though if they actually beat Vegas and tie it, but then they get upset by Anaheim? That would be.
I almost see that as more likely than Vegas winning. Like, this kind of stuff happens and just like chaos theory jumps in and is like, let's do something stupid. Like, whenever something like this is happening, it's the Coyotes, it's the Blue Jackets, it's the Ducks. It's these teams you don't expect just go out there and they just play an incredible shutdown game and they win 2-1.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it'll
I'd
be
love to
interesting to
see
keep an
it,
eye on
but
that though.
we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I think what do we want to dive into next? We got a couple more things.
Let's talk about the Lindholm trade. Let's do it.
Yeah. The biggest, yeah, we kind of alluded to it before. Biggest trade of the season so far. Unless a Jake Gensel trade happens, this is probably the biggest trade we see this season.
Yeah.
And it happened like right before the All-Star game. The exact same as last year when Vancouver traded out Bo Horvat to the Islanders. And the first time we saw Bo Horvat in an Islanders jersey was during the All Star Weekend. And tonight we saw our first look of Elias Lindholm in a Vancouver Canucks jersey. He is going to be number 23. 28 was not available to him. It is not officially retired within the organization, but number 28 was the number that Luc Bourdon wore with the Vancouver Canucks during his short tenure with them before he passed away. So it's kind of a thing amongst the franchise that, like, it's not officially retired, but it's like nobody's gonna wear number 28 again in his memory. So he will be number 23.
Whenever that happens, I always wish they would just retire the jersey number. Because like I think we're at the point nobody wants to see somebody else wear 28, and if that's the case, why not just retire it? It doesn't.
Yeah.
You're not at that point. You're not even like taking a number away because nobody was going to wear it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. It's like if no one's gonna ever wear it again, it just and if you're gonna say it's to like honor his memory, just be like, you know what, we're retiring it and have it retired. Then I think if you're gonna be like,
it's a
it's
good
just within
look and it
thing,
fixes an
like,
easy issue. Like,
yeah, I
there's no
I
downside
completely
to it.
agree.
Do we
But yeah,
want to
well,
outline everything that went back to Calgary in the trade?
yeah, I can. It's pretty good return for Calgary. Not gonna lie. So the Flames acquire Andrei Kuzmenko, who was the piece holding it up. I was listening on the radio right when it kind of happened that Elliot Friedman dropped the news that a deal could happen. All of a sudden, 10 minutes later, it's like, okay, there's a trade. It's pretty much confirmed because they were already talking to Kuzmenko, trying to get him. They were having his agent talk to him about waiving his no trade clause. I think it was a 10-team no trade clause, which Calgary was on it, so they didn't need him to waive it, which he ultimately did. So Andrei Kuzmenko, Hunter Brusevich, Yoni Yermo, a 2024 first round pick, and a conditional 2024 fourth round pick that will become a third round pick if the Canucks reach the Western Conference Finals. Going to Calgary in exchange for Elias Lindholm to the Canucks.
This has massive potential to be a huge win-win trade. This could, in 5 years, we could look back on this the same way we look back on the Tage Thompson trade.
Yeah.
Like, if Elias Lindholm could very well be the piece that pushes the Canucks over the edge and helps them win a Stanley Cup, or at least go on a cup run. And Calgary got a lot back here. A first-round pick. Sorry, how do you pronounce that? Hunter
Brusevich. Yeah, the Z is silent.
Yeah. Oh, those Zs flanked by consonants always get me. He's looked really good, and he's only like 19 or something
He's
like
one of
that.
the better defensive prospects within the league. I was shocked he even dropped to the third round. A lot of people thought he was going to be an early second round pick. Some people thought he could even sneak in as a late first, potentially last year. And then, just been tearing it up in the OHL.
Yeah, and Kuzmenko, obviously he scored more than normally would last year. He had a outrageous shooting percentage of like, what was it, like 29% or something? It was something really goofy, but
and still within 124 games in the NHL, still 95 points.
Yeah, that's incredible. And was he playing on the first line to put those up?
He was kind of bouncing around. I think he was kind of back and forth last year. This year was all over the place. Obviously found himself being a healthy scratch a couple times. And I don't think the Canucks necessarily were like, man, we need to move him, or it was like something they wanted to do. But again, when it comes down to they had to move out because they were kind of right near the cap. So they needed to move out money to bring in Lindholm, and Kuzmenko's kind of the guy that fit the bill. And it's,
Kuzmenko was making more than Lindholm this year, right? Like his cap hits bigger.
Yeah, so about a little over $500,000 more.
Yeah, so I imagine that's the main reason why he's one of the guys who makes more that is expendable.
Yeah,
and I think he's a great pickup for Calgary. I saw a picture. I can't remember who even tweeted. I think it was just some random Calgary fan on Twitter, and he just posted a picture and said, "Fucking fade me, fam." And it was a picture of who was it? Goudreau, Kachuk, Giordano, Monahan, and Lindholm all celebrating a goal on the ice.
Yeah,
and that's the last of those 5 guys now, and that was their core, like, not that long ago. That was the guys going forward. We knew Gio was old, but that
you kind of expected him to retire with the Flames, not
you expected one of
4
those
years
guys
later
to stick around long term, like just one of them. So the fact that all of those guys are gone is this is really a new era. The new coach too, new GM. This is a new era of the Calgary Flames, and I'll be really interested to see how they do next year going forward when they enter officially the Dustin Wolf era.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that, I mean, Kuzmenko, like, it's not like he lost his skill. I mean, his shooting percentage last year was obviously not something he was going to be able to maintain. But I think this is still a guy that can easily be a 60 to 70 point guy per season. And if the Flames can build him back up to that, next year at the trade deadline, you can offload him potentially if he gets back to that that 60, 70 point, you could offload him for another first round pick. And then you're looking at, for Lindholm, you got Brusevich, 2 first round picks, and then the other pieces, which I think at that point, like, that's a home run for the Flames. And I think either way, when you look at it for the Canucks, it could be a win for them. I think you can make the argument it's still a win for the Canucks, even if they make it to the Stanley Cup final and lose.
Yeah.
If they win the cup, it's obviously it's a win-win.
Yeah.
I don't believe, and obviously as of right now, it wasn't the Canucks acquire Lindholm and boom, an extension for him. I don't think there will be an extension. I think this is purely a rental, and it is a lot to give up for a rental. I think that's why the Canucks really need to at least get to the cup final. And it also kind of helps him, with a guy like Elias Pettersson. This is showing him that, they're like, we're not going to, keep retooling and doing this and this. Like, we're all in. We're committed to winning now. And I think that's something that is going to play a big role in helping them get him to resign. But again, I don't see Lindholm re-signing because, it sounds like as of when he was with the Flames, he was wanting $9 million.
Yeah.
And the Canucks obviously can't afford that. Second of all, it looks really bad if they dumped Bo Horvat last year, who, in my opinion, is a better all-around player than Lindholm. I do think there's areas that Lindholm is better at than Horvat, but I think in terms of the player as a whole, not to mention Horvat was your captain, the fact that they weren't willing to give Bo Horvat his 8 to 8.5 that he wanted, they trade him out, and I think they got less for Horvat than they did for what they gave up for Lindholm. So if you're now going to give Lindholm a $9 million per year deal, is a bit of a rough look.
I think
when
they just can't with the current makeup. Like, they have to sign Pettersson. They got to extend PD. Like, that's like you can't use up the money for PD on Lindholm. You have to do Pettersson first. Like, that is your future of the team. And
you also got to look down the road. Like, Bessers is up next year.
Sure.
And it looked like he was kind of be exiled from Vancouver and shipped out, and now he was always a fan favorite, but now the way he's playing, he's probably going to stick around. So you got to have money next year to keep Besser around. So it's a lot to give up for a rental, but again, if they bring home a cup out of it, it's a win regardless of what they gave up.
Yeah, and
especially when it'd be their first Stanley Cup as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, getting that first cup is so massive, and it's really interesting. I doubt it'll happen. I love thinking about things like this that'll happen, but I doubt it. But Lindholm would be a top 5 Calgary Flame of all time immediately if he went there, did well with the Canucks. They win the cup, they don't win the cup, and then he re-signs in Calgary in the offseason.
Yeah.
Could you imagine him coming back to Calgary after that haul they just got? That dude would instantly be like a top 5 Flame of all time. People would love this man.
I don't think it's out of the question. Back. Like, it's not like Lindholm was traded because he refused to sign there.
Yeah, it was just kind of, everyone realized it was kind of time. It wasn't quite working out, but it wasn't bad terms by any means. And, if maybe he is over the next bit of the season, his trade value goes down a bit, or his contract value for his next one goes down a bit, or maybe he does really well and the Flames organization sees maybe he is worth 8.5, 9, and they bring him back. That would be a really cool story, I think, especially for a team that, Canadian market has so much difficulty keeping guys around a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would just be so fun to see.
One thing I will say on this is I don't think Lindholm will be in a Canucks jersey next season. That being said, I don't think it's out of the question that he signs with the Canucks because I still could see, or because if he goes to free agency, he's a UFA. So the max he can sign is that 7-year deal. There's still a world where the Canucks could sign Lindholm to whatever the 9 million he wants for 8 years. And if they've already talked to a team beforehand that's comfortable with that contract, kind of similar to what the Flames did with Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, he was an RFA, but still within the circumstances of the Canucks could sign Lindholm to an 8-year deal and then trade him to whatever team he wants to go to, in a team that's, like, yeah, we're good with that contract. We're good with giving up this. Like, there's still a world where the Canucks could sign Lindholm and then get some assets back for him. Is that likely? Probably not, because I think teams would rather just get into a bidding war for him on the open market rather than having to give out, a good prospect and a first to get him or whatever it may be. But it's something it's not completely out of the question.
Yeah, and especially because he's not young. He's 29 years old at this point. So I don't think other teams will care that much about the 8th year. If anything, they probably don't want that 8th year. They want it to be a 7-year contract because that's one less year that you'd have Lindholm at the end of the contract when he's probably not performing up to that 9 million at that point.
Yeah, the 8 years is just for Lindholm as a player, just to secure that extra money, and then in doing so, it would give the team the opportunity to get him rather than getting into a bidding war and the price driving up on the open market. You can just know that you're getting him already, and you're not having to get in that bidding war. But at that cost, you're giving up, certain pieces to acquire him to begin with. So, will it happen? Probably not. But it's not 100% out of the question. But I like this return for Calgary.
Yeah.
I think within this draft, I think even just getting that second first round pick, which again is probably going to be a late round pick, especially just with where the Canucks are going to finish. Even if they go out in the first round, it's still going to be a 22, 23 pick. But at the end of the day, if you're getting one of the best defensive prospects in hockey right now, and a first round pick in Kuzmenko, who is still going to be a great piece for the Flames, and they could potentially flip. And then not to mention Yermo, I think is probably at best he's going to be a bottom pair defenseman. Which, if you can still get a bottom pair defenseman that can, play good on the penalty kill or log heavy minutes when need be, is awesome. And a potential 3rd round pick, you could get a steal with that. We've seen guys like Braden Point, Elias Sorokin go in the 3rd round, and then we've seen other great players go in the 4th round. They really got to do their due diligence now, knowing that, this first round pick is going to be 22nd to 32nd. Let's start really locking in on those players who can fall within that range, similar to what San Jose did last year. When they got that first from New Jersey, they knew, it's going to be from here to here. Let's lock in on the players that are going to be in here. So when it comes our pick, based on who's available, we can get the best player we can, which I think, based on what was available there for them, I think they did. So I think that's Calgary's next mission now is really utilizing that first round pick to get the best prospect they can.
Yeah. Do you know how long Andrei Kuzmenko's contract goes for?
It's up after next season, which, if he plays good, he can easily be moved at next year's deadline.
Yeah. Or he could sign an extension and stick around in Calgary. So
if they can wow him, because remember Calgary was on his no trade list, so I don't think he's thrilled about going there. But
you have to wonder if Vancouver would have been on his no trade list if the roles were reversed, because a lot of guys just go, all the Canadian teams, and then pick the remaining 2. So
Yeah,
It,
yeah, it's interesting. It would be interesting to know kind of what teams are on there and what the criteria is, but there's so many different things that it could be.
um, do we have much more than the All Star? Do we have anything other than the All Star teams?
We do we can kind of do it a little bit. Again, come this Monday, we're gonna do an episode and kind of talk more about it once we
Yeah.
have everything out there. But we can confirm now that uh, the 5 players that were mentioned previously, that being Alex Formenton, Carter Hart, Dylan Dubé, Cal Foote, and Michael McLeod, are the 5 players that were asked to surrender in terms of the ongoing investigation. So there's not much. Like, we know, all of their lawyers have come out and made statements saying that they're going to plead not guilty. I can't remember which player it was, but their lawyers stated that they're going to fight to against these false allegations, which is a pretty strong claim to make.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Um, but and it sounds like a trial won't take place until at least 2026. So we're 2 years away from a trial even happening for this. So I mean, again, there's a lot more to the story. We'll kind of get more news on it as of Monday.
Yeah, so we might, depending on when that happens in the day, we might do a Monday night podcast and upload that on the Tuesday, if there's enough there. But
Yeah,
at the minimum, by next Friday, we'll have some sort of coverage on that with whatever they announce, uh, with that whole case going forward.
yeah. It's also this actually also just came out today. Um, and again, take from this what you will. This is all kind of speculation, but Michael McLeod is facing an additional charge for being a party to the offense, which kind of all roads are leading to he was the original one involved, who then invited the rest of the players to in and kind of
Right.
was in the middle of it. So that's also kind of something to keep an eye on. We kind of thought that was going to be something that probably comes out when the trial happens, but to now have it come out even before the press conference shows that they're really trying to be as transparent as possible with all of this and not leaving anything up for speculation or to the last minute. It's they're trying to do right by the
Which is
victim
good.
here. Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
Um,
One before we hop into just talking a little briefly about the All Star game. This is one of my favorite times of the year, where the Athletic, which is kind of one of the biggest sources of hockey news with a lot of the best writers, every year they do a player poll where they gather a bunch of players around the league, and it's all done anonymously, and they poll the players on a variety of questions. So I just want to kind of get your opinion. I'm going to kind of go through a couple of these. I'm only going to do kind of the top 3, unless there's like one that really that really stands out from the rest. So I just kind of want to get
I've
your
seen
reaction
like
to these.
1 or 2 of these. I have no idea how many they did. Um, I was really wishing I had an Athletic subscription when this was all coming out, because they also, it's anonymous, but they still get a bunch of quotes from guys, and some of them were really good. And
Yeah,
I wasn't able to see too much of it without that subscription. So I know you do have one, or at least you have in the past. So
yeah.
it'll be good to get some of that.
So the first one is kind of the big one. Who's the best player in the league? They had 181 votes. Obviously, McDavid was first, only 69%.
Interesting.
Nathan McKinnon was second with 16%. And in third was Nikita Kucherov with 7.18%. Which, and again, take with this
Not
what
too
you will,
surprising.
because
Makes
there
sense.
obviously is bias. Philip Forsberg did receive a vote, which we obviously know he's not the best player in the league. So like there obviously is some biases when it
Yeah,
comes to
whenever
this.
these happen, they'll do in years past they've done I don't know if it was the Athletic specifically, but there's like the player votes for um best goalie in the league. And Vasi receives 55, Shesterkin receives 20, Hellebuck 20, and then there's like at the bottom there's, Mike Smith received 1 vote. Like all these backups and like just barely starters for other teams are all getting 1 vote, probably from their goalie tandem partner or something.
Yeah.
So,
Well, this kind of goes into it because this is interesting. The next one is best goalie in the league, 183 votes. Andre Vasilevsky being at the top with 44%.
yeah.
Connor Hellebuck in second with 15. And then tied for third is Thatcher Demko and Ilya Sorokin, just a little bit over 7.5. And out of those 183 votes, again, like this is why this doesn't mean a whole lot. One player actually did vote for Carey Price because he technically isn't retired. So Carey Price did get a vote in that.
That's kind of funny. You have to wonder, is that a guy on the Canadians, or is that like
Exactly right.
a guy who's known him for a long time, a Crosby or something?
Yeah. Next one is the most underrated player in the league with 168 votes.
Oh man.
Number 2 was Alexander Barkov with 12.5.
He didn't win it. Okay. We're getting
3,
somewhere.
well, kind of. 3 was Sam Reinhart with just a little bit under 6%. And
Okay.
then first was other, which is because there was just so many
right.
players that kind of received 1 vote, that like they all kind of received 1, so it was just a hodgepodge with
Right.
22%. So unanimously Barkov did get the most, but there were so many other guys that received votes that Barkov wasn't the top, I guess, if that's how you will.
Yeah. At this point, I think Barkov's overrated just because of how many people think he's underrated. We
Yeah,
all
like it's
know he's a
5
super.
years now. It's
We
5
all
years he's been
know
in
he's
that
a
role.
superstar,
Yeah.
Like he's fantastic. Most people have him in their top 10 centers in the league, and I don't know if he's at that point. So maybe that's me underrating him, but that's, or maybe that's everyone having him a bit too high because they don't want him to be underrated.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Next is the most overrated player in the league with 101 votes.
That's very
So
interesting.
so the top one is obviously other, being just under 27% of the votes.
Of
The
course.
top single player was Trevor Zegras, at just a little bit under 13%. Next is Darnell Nurse, a little bit under 8%. And then tied under them is Matthew Tkachuk and Jason Robertson at just a little bit under 7%.
Very interesting coming from the players in the league saying
Yeah.
that guys like Robertson and Kachuk are overrated. That's very interesting.
And again,
How
I
many
think Darnell
guys
Nurse
in
is
the
only
league
there.
because of his contract?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was, as soon as you
Even
said
you
him,
knew.
next I was expecting you to say Seth Jones. Like
He did. Seth Jones is also on there. He received 2% of votes.
yeah,
Him, Jacob Trouba, and Evander Kane.
pretty good votes, honestly. I
Um,
heavily disagree on Zegras. I think a very few I think they want to market him, and so a lot of the analysts talk about him a lot, and that's why people think he's overrated. Nobody talks about him like he's absolutely insane game breaking player yet.
yeah, he
But
gets marketed for his personality, like,
yeah,
and I
and
don't think players realize that.
yeah, he scored over 70 points twice on his ELC. Like he's not
Yeah,
bad. Like on a abysmal Ducks team no less. So he I definitely think he's been done dirty a little bit by social media. He got pushed really hard, and then he's not a game breaker immediately, so people are saying, "Oh, he's not worth money," but he's gonna be really good, and he is really good already. So we'll just have to see him beat those allegations when he can.
Yeah. I need to quickly fix something here. Do you want to do just as of right now, is the All Star break, the current stats leaders here?
I
And then
sure
I'll
can.
hop into the next one here. I just got to fix something quickly. You're good
Yeah.
to roll through the stats leaders on where we're at the All Star break right now because all games are done. So these are the official numbers.
Yep. So we do have officially in first at the break. Back on top, they've been trading back and forth like crazy. Number one for points in the league, we got Nikita Kucherov at 85. And number two, the guy right by him for the last 20 points at least, Nathan McKinnon at 84. And then down 12 points below that, we got David Pastrnak at 72. Quite a gap between those first two and Pasternak, and honestly, a decent gap between Pasternak and four. So uh, they've really separated at the top there. Connor McDavid is in fifth with 67 for those who are wondering. So 18 points back of Nikita Kucherov at the All Star break. We'll see if he can catch him. A lot of people think it's going to happen. It's McDavid. He obviously could, but they're on a 16 game win streak and he hasn't closed that much ground yet. Uh, no fault of his own. Kucherov and McKinnon have been both scoring at like 2.5 points per game over the last 10 games. They're playing out of their minds. Um, Going to goal leaders here. We got Austin Matthews, of course, in first with 40 goals on the season at the All Star break. 40 goals in 46 games is unreal. In second, we got Sam Reinhart with 37. And in third, we have David Pasternak with 33. And for goalies, for saves, goals saved above expected, a bit of a more advanced stat. We got 22.1 goals saved above expected for Connor Hellebuck, 18 goals saved above expected for Thatcher Demko, and 14 and a half goals saved above expected for Connor Ingram. Uh, Three guys who look like they're they have a very good shot to all be the Vesna finalists this year. It might go, somewhat like a Jeremy Swayman, who's at 13.8 goals saved above expected instead of Ingram. But I think Demko and Hellebuck are locks for the Vesna finalists, at least.
As they should be.
Yeah. I am just going to sort by this to make sure.
Make sure you get the top ones. Which one are you looking at here?
There we go. I just did most of the regular ones we do. I just wanted to talk about it because as of late, every time I've checked, he's been number one. He's dropped down to number 4 right now, so he might have not had a great game as of late. Maybe the last game there. But basically, all of January, Andrei Vasilevsky has been number 1 in the league for high danger shots saved above expected,
Oh
which
yeah.
is, you know, uh, incredibly specific stat. But it watching Tampa Bay obviously every game, it makes so much sense. They they rely on him to save fucking 4 or 5 breakaways 2-on-1s a game. So
Yeah.
that's where he earns the money, even if the save percentage, the goals against average doesn't always reflect it. He's still saving those important shots.
Yeah.
But that's just my homer stat. We got those are all the stats at the All Star break. And before we get into the All Star teams, to wrap it up here, I just got real quick that the Vancouver Canucks 1 or 2 days ago actually signed a multi-year contract extension with general manager Patrick Alvin.
Yeah,
I don't
I
think
believe
we've
that
touched on that.
that came out the same day of the Lindholm trade.
Yeah, they deserved. I mean, he's made great moves in the past few years. Um, I've looked a couple spots and I haven't found how many years it is. I don't know if they announced the length of the deal, but everywhere I look, it says multi-year contract. So I guess we can only speculate that it's 2+ years, probably 3 or 4.
I believe I heard 3. I'm not 100% sure, but I saw that people were saying 3.
3 is the most common for general managers, I'm pretty sure. So that would make sense.
Yeah. Before we hop into the All Star, the final one of these player polls that we'll go through from the Athletic is kind of everybody's favorite one. Who is the player in the league whose face you want to punch the most? This one got
Okay.
147 votes.
Did
Um,
he? I think there's one guy that everyone is going to assume is going to win this. I think he gets upset this year.
who do you think wins?
I
And who
think
do you
Nick
think upsets him?
I think Nick Cousins has done so much dirty shit this year. I think the players are getting sick of it. I think you can see it when he's on the ice. I think he I think there's a good chance he beat out Brad Marchand, who I am assuming is at minimum second.
Brad Marchand is third
Wow,
with
he
15% of votes.
okay.
Um, Number 2 is again other, which is a
Of
bunch
course.
of players. Some of the likes that include Darnell Nurse, Brendan Gallagher, Eric Branson, Liam O'Brien, Mason Marchment, Rasmus Dahlin is actually on there. Roman Yossi, Tim Stutzel, who I
Roman
think
Yossi.
I think wait till next year. I think Stutzel is going to be quite a bit higher. I think he's another guy that players are starting to get sick of because of his constant diving. Matthew Tkachuk is fourth with 7.5%. And then just underneath Tkachuk tied is Michael Bunting and Connor Garland at a bit over 4%. And then, as you said, Nick Cousins is number one
He is number
um,
1. Okay.
with
I thought it might be
28 and a
Wilson.
half 28.5% of votes. Tom
And
Wilson
well
actually is
deserved.
only 1.36%, which puts him in
Interesting.
the criteria of tying with Trevor Zegras, Rasmus Anderson, Radko Gudas, Nikita Zadorov, Evander Kane, and David Perron.
That's so funny. All those guys are in there on that list for a very similar reason of they're shit disturbers. And then Zegras is on there for like the opposite reason of like he just like he does kind of have a face you'd want to punch.
He just
I
he
can
mouths
see it.
off too much.
Yeah.
Um, just to list off the other ones, because might as well. We've kind of done the whole list. At 3.5% is Garnet Hathaway and Brady Tkachuk. And then 4
Fair.
players are tied at 2%, that being Ryan Lomberg, Nazem Kadri, Kevin Fiala, and Jeff Skinner, which Jeff Skinner's, again, I think Fiala and Skinner kind of two of those guys that don't like to mix it up, but they do kind of mouth off a bit from certain games that I've seen. They like to kind of get in there and then
And then
mix
sit
mix the
away.
pot up, yeah, and then they get out of there and just laugh it off and keep chirping, but won't ever face the music for it. But yeah, I mean Nick Cousins is the clear runaway favorite for it. Which again, I mean that says a lot about how players are feeling.
Yeah, and it makes all too much sense. Like there was a good couple weeks in a row there where every week he had done something dirty and new, and we were just sick of covering it because just stop attempting to injure people for a week. Like
Yeah.
so I'm glad to see that the players seem to agree with that sentiment.
The last one, I'm not going to do the full stats, but I'm going to give you the chance because I'm pretty sure you can guess number one for each of these.
Okay.
They pulled the players on their favorite road city to play in and their least favorite city to go to and play. I'm pretty sure you can guess what number one will be for each of them. They're
Okay.
pretty easy to guess.
I think one is harder than the other. I think the least favorite place to play has to be Winnipeg.
Yeah, you are
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. I'm
for
curious.
obvious reasons.
So I assume there's quite a few Canadian teams. How high is Carolina on there?
For least favorite,
Yes.
they are number 4. Number 1 is Winnipeg, then Ottawa, Buffalo, then Carolina, and then
Wow, they're that high up.
Phoenix or Tempe.
Yeah, they're even worse than Tempe. I just know almost every time I see, any team thing, with whether it's Tampa or just players around the league, and they're like, who has the worst locker rooms in the league? So many people say Carolina. Apparently, it just like their away locker room sucks so much ass.
I can't imagine it's worse than what Tempe has.
No, probably not. But
But yeah, I've heard Carolina's is quite bad. Yeah,
yeah, so I was just curious on that. For the best team to visit and play, I got to imagine it's the Rangers.
it's a 2-horse race. There's number 1 and the number 2 is not far behind.
I'm going to assume the Rangers are up there because New York playing in Madison Square Garden, that's got to be big.
New York is second, and that does just include Madison Square Garden. That does include Long Island or New Jersey. Like that's going to play the Rangers.
Oh, it's a favorite away arena, not like place to visit.
Well, favorite road city to play in.
Okay, I got to imagine Vegas is right up there then.
Vegas is number 1 with 25% of the votes, and least favorite Winnipeg was 41. So Winnipeg's the clear cut favorite for least, and then it's kind of a 2-horse race between Vegas and New York for favorite, which is cool to see. It's always cool to see kind of what the players think around the league.
You almost have to wonder at a certain point, and I have no idea what their record is, but do you wonder if that almost takes away a little bit of your home field advantage? That like for a team like Vegas, like guys love coming here and playing in your arena.
Well,
Like,
exactly, right?
does that gas them up? Does that take away a little bit of that advantage compared to oh fuck, I'm going to play in Winnipeg? Like,
And Winnipeg, like let's not act like Winnipeg's a bad city or anything. Like I think it's number 1 just because of how cold it is, and players have
that's the main thing.
openly stated that they just hate going there and having to pack their entire snowsuit for when they get off the plane and bus there.
Yeah, well, especially when hockey season is like it starts in October when it starts getting pretty cold, and it ends the regular season at least early April, which is just the end of the winter season. So if you're going to play
you could have
Winnipeg
snow all
home
year
game
round.
in January, you got to bundle up.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are really good. Those are really interesting lists. I love when they poll all the players like that and they do stuff like that. That's a lot of fun to know what they think.
Yeah, if I haven't fully gone through it, but if I'll go in at a later date and kind of see if I can find some of the best quotes from some, and I'll bring them to the table next time. We can go through some of those, because I'm assuming come next episode we won't have a whole lot to discuss, because a lot of teams aren't like some teams don't play for like 2 weeks now, so we won't have a lot of stuff to talk about for next Friday's episode. So I'll try to come to the table with some of those that we can look at and discuss a bit.
Absolutely, those are a lot of fun. Do we want to list off the All-Star teams?
Yeah, like we said, there's not much to discuss with the All-Star weekend, but we can kind of go through the teams now that we know what they are, now that the rosters are finalized.
Yeah, they did the draft. I love the very specific brand of Riz that all 4 celebrity captains brought. Justin Bieber did his thing. He was having a blast, but he was sitting down on stage. He was making jokes with Matthews the whole time. Michael Bublé actually has way more charisma than I would have thought.
Do you want to know why?
Like, dude has kind of Riz. Why is that?
Yeah, he was high on shrooms for it.
Was he?
Yeah, he had to do an interview afterwards, a press conference, and his buddy told him it was a micro dose, and it very clearly wasn't. That's why when he was trying to do one of his speeches, he completely lost his train of thought 3 times. Yeah, he was he was having some good times on
He didn't
Shrooms
look that out of
during
place
it.
with it though. Honestly, like I it came across as nervous more than this guy's tweaking or anything. So, he didn't do a
Yeah,
horrible job with it. He he seemed to have fun and it made it more fun for other people. But
yeah,
Tate McRae clearly just like loves the NHL and was excited to be there, which
yeah.
is
Just loves hockey and everything
so
around it.
sorely needed in the NHL. The
And
amount of times they've had celebrity guests that couldn't give less of a shit. Like if you're too happy to the point where it's cringe, that's a million times better than the guy who just doesn't care to be there because that just devalues the league. Like that just looks
yeah,
so bad.
and you could see how happy she was when she got to be like, you know what? She
She was
kind of
so
it almost looked like she stiff armed McKinnon McCarm was like, no, we're making this pick, and she got to because she's from the Calgary area, huge Flames fan, and she got to even though he's not on the team anymore, she was able to draft one of her favorite players in Lindholm, which you could tell was also a really cool
yeah.
moment for her
First
to be
time
able to
we've
do
seen
that.
him in a Canucks jersey. He was wearing it
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
the
so
only
that
Canuck
was
not on team Hughes and Buble as well.
yeah. And Will Arnett, one of the only guys.
Yeah,
Will Arnett, honestly, he shouldn't have been one of the celebrity captains. He should have been the guy putting this on. They need to get people who know how to broadcast and perform to be the MCs of these things. They keep getting analysts to do it, and it's just this weird hockey stat guy who he didn't do a horrible job, but like it could have been a lot better.
yeah.
Like,
I think the whole thing as a whole. First of all, I think it needed to be an hour and a half. Like them trying to cram stuff in. I didn't like, and the other thing I didn't like, honestly, I didn't like how they did the end. Like you've got the four players at the end. It's like, oh, you each get a card, and like, no, if you're gonna do it, do the one player gets picked last, but they get a card. Like, don't, these are NHL players making millions of dollars. Like, you don't. I just don't
yeah,
like that at the end. It's like, oh, you each get a card, and that's just what team you get thrown on. Like,
yeah.
it should be,
Just have them pick the last four players. Like, what's wrong with
yeah,
that? One guy
exactly,
gets picked last. Oh no, he's the worst all-star in the NHL. Like, he still went to the all-star game.
yeah,
Like,
and you get a car out of it. Like, well, you would have if they had done it this way, but they chose
that
to
would be
take it a
cool
different
too.
route.
That would be so funny to see a guy dejected to get picked second last because he wanted the car.
Yeah, right. But overall, I think they did. I think they made great choices with the celebrity captains. I think they had a lot of fun with it.
I think a lot
Like
of
you
the
talked
guys
about, they
had
could
a
have
bit
turned their
more
mics
personality
off.
than we've seen. Definitely
Yeah,
need to turn the mics off. You could actually hear at one point, they were Arnett, McDavid, and Drysaitel were talking about their next pick, and Drysaitel, just like for everyone to hear, was just like, "Guys, let's mute our mics." And I was like,
yeah.
"Why do they have control over that? Shouldn't it be a guy in an audio room cutting the audio to certain mics and then turning it on when they speak?"
Yeah, it should just be
Like,
whatever team's making their pick.
like instead they gave them Xbox headsets where they can mute it whenever. Like, a little more production value is almost always needed with the NHL, and it's too bad because
yeah,
it's there's clearly people trying, and there's clearly people behind the scenes who aren't willing to put quite a bit of enough money into it. But
yeah.
it was fun to watch nonetheless. It didn't drag on. It was good.
Another thing I'm not a huge fan of, and I know maybe fans of these teams might. I didn't like how at the end of it we see basically all the Canucks players go to the same team and all the Maple Leafs go to the same team because now it's like I would have liked to see Austin Matthews play with like Barzell or something. But now we know when Matthews goes out there, he's probably going to be with, Nylander and Riley or Marner and Riley. And then with the
Yeah.
Canucks, we're going to see Pedersen, Besser, and Hughes. Like, I want to see these players play with different guys. I don't want to just see them go into the All Star game and just play with the same players that they always play with. Um,
I definitely understand that sentiment because that is an incredibly fair assessment. But at the same time, I maybe it's just because it's NHL players showing personality and we don't get that much. We're starved for it as NHL fans. But it was cool to see about be up there. And every time it got back to his pick, Matthews and Riley were so excited because they're like, another Leaf came back to us. So they pick all their buddies and it's I
Yeah,
definitely
from
think
that
more of the
perspective.
I definitely think more of the problem is just how many Leafs and how many Canucks went was a bit overkill.
Well, yeah, the Canucks set the record for most representatives, and I think they even had that before uh, Lindholm was traded and is now technically a Canuck representative
I
instead of
really think
Calgary.
he
I
should
think they
still
already
count
set
as
the
a
record.
Flames representative because he's going for the Flames. Because if he was on the Canucks when they picked him, he wouldn't be going.
Yeah, yeah,
But
no, yeah, yeah.
that's
He is going
that's splitting
as
hairs
the
for
Flames
counting a record
representative,
about
but
the All Star game.
yeah, but yeah.
Um,
I mean, overall, like it's fun. I'm glad they brought back the idea of doing this. Better production, I think, is something they could have done. Afterwards, they did do the 3-on-3 of the PWHL, the 3-on-3 game, which I thought that was awesome. I think that's a great addition
yeah,
to it. I hope that is something that they continue to do each and every year, because I think it just adds a little extra more fun and can continue to showcase what this other league is all about. Like it's a new and growing league, and I think every little bit that can be used to help elevate this league and push it and bring in more fans, I think is also awesome of them to do that.
yeah, 100%. Like them, I'm glad they've continued to partner with them as they did with a couple of them before it was actually before it was the PWHL. They just had professional women's players at last year's All Star competition, and that was fun to see.
Yeah, but I mean,
Um,
overall, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the new skills competition, um, you know, takes place. The All Star game, I think we kind of know what that's going to be. It's going to kind of be the same old. But I'm curious to see how this new skills competition goes that they're doing.
yeah. Do we each want to pick two teams and just run down the roster for them real quick?
Yeah, we can do that. I just got to pull it up here. So take your pick of which team you want to do, and we'll start.
Where is I'll let's do Team Hughes first. That was the one with celebrity captain Michael Bublé, and the one team that had two co-captains instead of a captain and an assistant. Uh, One of them's not playing. Co-captains Quinn Hughes and Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes is injured right now, so he won't be playing.
Yeah,
So they kind of moved their assistant captain to Elias Pettersson. They had the first overall pick, which they used to take Nikita Kucherov. Then they took Thatcher Demko, Kyle Connor, Brady Kachuk, uh, Jack Hughes' buddy Jesper Bratt, Cam Talbot, uh, Brock Besser, JT Miller. So like four Canucks on the roster, actually five,
yeah, five.
and Frank Vetrano.
Yeah, which I mean, you can say about all the teams, but that's a pretty good team. Again, I would have liked to see the Canucks players dispersed a bit more, but if you're a Canucks fan, you probably love
Yeah.
seeing them all together still.
They definitely gave more of a chance for that to happen than Matthews. Like Matthews immediately picked Nylander and then Marner, but
Yeah,
they still went like Jack Hughes clearly wanted Brought, and Quinn Hughes and Pedersen clearly wanted Besser and Miller and Demko, but they
yeah,
still picked Kucherov first, and then they went Demko, and then Kyle Connor, Brady Kachuk before they picked any of their guys after that. So they at least
yeah,
split it up a bit
yeah.
before eventually being like, okay, well, if they're still there.
The next team, Team McDavid with, like we mentioned, celebrity um, captain Will Arnett, and then assistant captain Leon Draisaitl. And this is the order within they did their picks: Connor Hellebuck, David Pasternak, Rasmus Dahlin, Robert Thomas, Sam Reinhart, as McDavid calls him, Sam Bobrovsky, Boone Jenner, Nick Suzuki, and then Thomas Hurdle as their card player, as I guess we'll call them.
Yeah, I respect that he didn't get too flustered. McDavid recovered pretty good from that little flub. He called him Sam Bobrovsky and very quickly was said, sorry, Sergey Bobrovsky. And
Yeah,
because if he didn't say anything, hashtag Sam Bobrovsky would have been trending in Canada, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you just gotta take it on the chin and oops, sorry, and fix the mistake. And he did a pretty good job of recovering there.
yeah.
I thought it was very funny that after uh they were at the end of the snake draft, so they picked fourth and then fifth. So they got Hellebuck and Pasternak, and then when it came back around, they went Darlene and Thomas. And at that point, they went to commercial break, and when they came back, the guy interviewed him, and he was like, "You guys got a lot of offensive firepower. Are you going to pick up any guys to help you out on the back end?" And I was thinking, they're 4 picks in, and they've got Connor Hellebuck and Rasmus Dahlin. Like, how
Yeah.
there's and are there any other defensemen that weren't captains? Like Makar
Well,
was a
it's
assistant. Like Quinn
Quinn
Hughes
Hughes and Morgan Riley. Yeah, Darlene was the only
he was the
the
only
he was the
one you
only
could pick.
defenseman. Yeah.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
was
So I don't think they did their homework too
I
well
thought it was
on
funny
that.
when the dude asked that, because I was like, they picked the first goalie out of everybody, and then
And the only defenseman.
they only defenseman. Like, yeah, they've got good offense, but they've probably got the best defense.
Yeah.
Um, and
Take
then
your pick. You got two teams.
we got Team Matthews with celebrity captain Justin Bieber and assistant captain Morgan Riley. So AM34 and Morgan Riley picking their buddies Nylander first and then Mitch Marner. And I thought it was funny that he just kept picking his buddies after that. Uh, After that, Jake Ottinger, Clayton Keller, who played minor hockey or junior hockey with Austin Matthews, Matthew Barzell, Igor Shesterkin, Philip Forsberg, Alex DeBrinket, and Vinny Trocheck.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it was
you could just tell, like you could tell the mixed reaction when Matthews talked about Arizona and then picked Clayton Keller. You could
yeah.
hear like that little mixed reaction, which I enjoyed.
I think just
Um,
because of the rumors that he would go to Arizona,
yeah,
but
but the fact
he's
is
not
he's
doing that.
locked in now. Like it's yeah, I think that's why I could get away with it. And then the last team McKinnon, which consisted of Tate McRae as their celebrity captain, and then assistant captain Cale Makar. First pick was used on Sidney Crosby, who wasn't there, but you can obviously tell that McKinnon's excited to play with Crosby in this. And again, this is why I love it. This format is because now we can actually see McKinnon and Crosby play together.
Yeah.
Their second pick was people were shocked by, but again, it's only because he's on their team. They took Alex Georgiev and then Kirill
898
Kaprizov,
save percent.
Sebastian Aho, Tom Wilson, Jeremy Swayman, Travis Konechny, Elias Lindholm, and then their last pick being Oliver Bjorkstrand. They got some grit there with Wilson and Konechny. One thing I will say about this team specifically, I'm calling them the no frills team, because I mean the yellow is identical to the yellow no frills uses, and then just that name bar on the back, all lowercase letters in that weird black box. It looks such like the no name brand from No Frills.
Dude, the jersey logo, it looks like what should be on the box of a fucking Hardee's burger, a Carl's Jr.
Yeah,
Like the star, like I know some people like them, and it's definitely good that some people do, but I think they look so weird between the all lowercase text for the names and
yeah, they'll all
the
and just
logo on the front. It just looks weird to
I
me.
think the most odd thing is it's just that the name of the player is underneath the number,
That too.
and then yeah, you couldn't even have it any capitals. It's just it looks a little weird, especially just the for Team
It's
McKinnon the
unique.
yellow.
It's
It just
unique. I'll give
reminds
them
me
that.
of No Frills, but yeah,
Yeah.
they are very unique. I will give them that for sure.
Yep. Crosby was the only one who wasn't there tonight that
Yeah.
will be there for the All Star game, but he had a stand in. I don't know if they announced really who it was, but it was some kid wearing a Crosby jersey.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure who. who that was, but
yeah, that was cool. Kid could skate.
yeah, he actually could pretty well.
They announced that he was going to be there to take Crosby's place. Kid jumps off the bench, does a crossover, and skates over in between the benches, like weaves right in and sits down. Like,
dude, he was ready for that moment.
He looked like any other NHL player getting called to come out and sit down. So
yeah, and it was cool. He got to sit on the bench as well with the players as well.
Yeah,
I don't know if he did for the entirety, but at the beginning, at least he was. So that's got to be a cool moment for him. But I think that kind of wraps up everything we had for this episode. Obviously, depending on how much news we get on Monday, we might come at you with a special episode sometime early next week to kind of talk about that news press conference. Again, a lot of it really just depends on what we get. Like if it's just what we know at this point, probably not. But if there's a lot more kind of stuff that comes out, we'll probably hop on and sit down and break down what any new information we get. Obviously, at some point next week, we'll discuss the results of the All Star Weekend. Winner of the new skills competition, who wins the All Star Weekend, MVP, all that kind of fun stuff as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they really bring something special to these All Star competitions, and they're not doing it like before, where every All Star would do at least one event. They've only got 12 guys out of the ones we've listed who are actually doing the events, and it's weird. So some of them, like Fastest Skater has 1, 2, 3. They got 5 guys doing it. Hardest Shot has 5 guys, and some of them have a bit more. But one that I thought was weird was, I believe it was the passing challenge, had 11.
Yeah.
They had one of those 12 guys not do it, and that's it. JT Miller, I believe. Nope,
he's
Miller
a
is
pretty good passer. But yeah, it is interesting the way that they're doing it. So I'm curious to see how, because you need to, again, like it's guys get eliminated and some move on to the next round. So it'll be interesting to see how it kind of works out. Like, is there guys that take place in more and that gives them an advantage, or is there a way to kind of compensate for that? It'll be interesting to see how they.
I'm trying to quickly count, just pick a few players and see how many times they participate to see if some. Because if you win, you get a certain amount of points based on your placement, and the winner at the end gets $1 million. So it'd be messed up if McDavid goes 8 times and JT Miller or somebody only goes 5, right? Like you're already against McDavid. Now you got to try and beat the numbers too. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out, and if it works out into a format that will be used in future years, or maybe it's a one-off year. Like maybe this doesn't work out. It's going to be a big moment, so it'll be interesting to see how they make it work here.
I've just picked random players: Quinn Hughes, McDavid, and Kucherov. But it looks like I just counted all 3 of them, and they are in all but 2 of all of the things. So maybe they are all in an equal amount.
Oh, okay. So, and that's what I would assume would be the case with it.
It looked very funny originally, looking at the numbers and going, you have 11 out of 12 in the passing challenge. Like, rip,
all
rip
but one guy.
off.
Oh, is he the one who's not in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a shooter anyways, so.
Yeah, at least that one makes sense, At least they didn't, leave guys out of ones that they should be in, because it looks like for the most part, McDavid, Hughes, Makar, Barzal, and Nylander for Fastest Skater. That all makes so much sense,
Yeah.
Like a lot of the guys, it looks like they put them in the proper category, which that seems like a no-brainer. That almost seems like a dumb thing to say, but they haven't done it in years past. So
yeah,
it's nice to see them actually putting a little emphasis on that. The only person I can see out of place in any of these is I don't think Barzal takes that many one-timers.
Yeah. Actually,
but
he kind of started to.
working the numbers, you gotta put him in somewhere, right? If you want
Yeah,
to take him out of other ones, like because they're not putting him in hardest shot. So
yeah, exactly. But I think that kind of wraps up everything we have for this episode. Again, we'll come at you guys next week, sometime early in the week, depending on what kind of news we get. That's all kind of just to be determined. Maybe if we don't get much, maybe we'll still just do a special one, kind of talking about the All Star game. We'll kind of just wait and see on that with everything that we're presented from now until Monday evening. I think is a fair assessment for how we'll go about all of that.
yeah, we'll have to see if much comes out. You know, depending on how entertaining the All Star game is and what comes out on Monday with the 2018 World Junior Team announcement or press conference. If we get a bunch of new stuff,
Yeah.
there's a good chance we'll do a midweek podcast. But if not, there's not a lot of games going on right now, so it could also slide to Friday.
Yeah. We'll kind of just
Play
by ear. We will throw updates up on the socials for what we're going to do because we are getting more active on those. And you can find us over on Instagram or Twitter/X at SEU Hockey. 3 simple letters and then hockey. Feel free to throw us a follow on there. We'll keep you updated with everything that's going on, so you'll be some of the first to know about all that. But again, thank you to everybody for listening. Enjoy the All Star Weekend. I know we will. For what it's worth, I guess we'll kind of figure out what it's worth as we go through it. But nonetheless, it will be a good time. So once again, thanks for listening, and we will catch you guys next week.